It's going. Hey, Ciara, we did it. We're live. Hey, everybody.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, are you confused about what foods are the healthiest? Do you worry about your food budget when you're making healthy food choices? Then you should stick around because this episode is for you. Today, my special guest co-host, there's two of them. You can only see one right now. One of them's invisible. She'll be joining me later, but we've got Ciara, and Kristen that'll be joining me. We'll do their intro here in just a moment, but I got to make sure I get the medical disclaimer out of the way so we don't get in trouble by anyone out there in the world. So welcome to Keto Chat Live. I'm your host, Carole Freeman. I have a master's degree in nutrition and clinical health psychology, also a board-certified ketogenic nutrition specialist. And this show is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not medical advice, nor intended to diagnose, prevent, treat, or cure any condition. If you have questions or concerns related to your specific medical condition, please go contact your personal qualified healthcare professional. So welcome to the show, Ciara.
Thank you so much, Carole. I am so excited to be here, and I apologized already, but I will do this again live that I'm a little scratchy. I was under the weather a couple of days ago, but I'm super excited to be here. I love talking about food. It is my ultimate passion. So thank you for having us on. And yeah, Kristen is on her way. She has a little itty bitty baby at home that she's putting down to bed. So it is a new way of life for sure.
Wonderful. Those of you watching, please participate in the show. I can see we've got people live here. So go ahead and just give us a comment. Let us know where you're joining from. The show's interactive. Feel free to ask questions, chime in, witty comments through the whole thing. We're glad you're here and we want you to be here with us the whole time. So also to kick things off, I have a quiz that I'll be, I'm going to just have a quiz question to start things out, and we'll let you all keep guessing. Where is Carole going for Thanksgiving weekend? So pop your guesses in the chat. We'll just keep that going here for a little while. I'll share the answer. We'll see if anybody can get it. If you've been watching recently, if you're a regular, you know the answer. So you can cheat if you've been watching for a while. But if not, this will just be a fun game to keep going. So let's see. Ciara. I can just keep saying your name both ways. Ciara. It's like Russell Wilson's wife, right?
Yes. Yeah. Or Ciara. Like the singer.
Okay. Same person. Yeah. Same person. Ciara and Kristen, they are co-hosts of Fiercely Holistic Podcast. They're both Nutrition Therapy Association graduates, nutritionists, holistic and functional nutritionists. So really great. So glad that you're here. I'll let you tell your story. Tell us a little bit more about who you are. How did you get interested in what you're doing?
Yeah. So I am a functional nutritional therapy practitioner. I live on Long Island, New York. I am also a Juris Doctor, almost about to get sworn in as a lawyer. So that's a whole nother story for a whole nother podcast episode. But I ultimately graduated law school. I was 24. I was on, the fast track to like working the 90-hour weeks and all that. And my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And through her care, I was really blown away at how narrow-minded our medical community is, and how there was no appreciation or understanding of the role that food plays, the role that stress plays, the importance of lifestyle in managing illness. Now, as a practitioner, I don't manage or treat illness, kind of like what you were saying in your disclaimer, but I knew that there was a role for me in the wellness field, because more people had to be empowered in understanding that the food choices that they make are really important, and it plays a huge role in how you feel. You obviously know that, Carole, like you do this, right? This is what you spearhead. And so I love that. So for me, I kind of put my law books aside for about 10 years. And I went back to school and I went to the Nutritional Therapy Association. And as I graduated, I began my practice. I'm the owner of Aura Nutrition and Wellness. And in my practice, I mostly help women, so moms, future moms, current moms, shift their habits and fuel their bodies, right? So it's so much about lifestyle, but it's also about What are you putting in your body? It matters. It totally matters. So I operate based on a nutrient-dense whole foods diet. And we work through habit and shifting and really ensuring that we each feel empowered and good in the choices that we're making.
Awesome. Valerie's here. She's a regular. Hello,
Hi,
Carole.
Valerie.
She says, Robin wants to be part of the show as well. And she wants to know, what are you drinking in the can? I think that says, well, I'm drinking.
Oh, you.
Maybe you.
I have oh my gosh. No, I have and I got the coaster. I have a big thing of peppermint tea.
Ciara? Tea. Okay.
Tea.
Peppermint tea, which is
I
good
like
for
that
the
question.
holiday. So mine is it's water and then also element salt. So Valerie's going to know what this is, but it's an electrolyte supplement that's primarily sodium from the company drinkelement.com. They don't sponsor the show. They could if they wanted to, but I know I'm good friends with the owners of the company too. But and then I'm drinking it out of my Improv Mania pint glass. It's my local comedy club that I host an open mic at there every Wednesday evening. And so I'm a big fan, but also they're awesome. And, it's a good.
That's awesome.
It's a good drink. I like drinking out of glasses. So thanks for Rebin for asking the hard questions. And then do you want to tell a little bit about Kristen, your partner, and hopefully she'll be joining us soon. But
I hope so. I mean, she hasn't texted yet, which is a bit concerning. However, that's okay. We could roll without her if something came up. Yep, that is totally fine. So Kristen and I met in school. She was one of the assistant teachers. She is also a functional nutritional therapy practitioner. She has her own crazy medical story, which kind of drove her to wanting to learn more about holistic nutrition. Okay. She was wheelchair bound out of nowhere in high school. And through a series of tests and, shifts in lifestyle, she is totally fine and functional now.
Wow.
But when we met, we hit it off. And we have this idea of creating a podcast. And so, yes, our podcast is called the Fiercely Holistic Podcast. And the goal of our podcast and all of our episodes and interviews is to really bring small, tangible changes into your life. So what can you do today that may not feel big, right? Like maybe adding those electrolytes to your water. That's a small change that's going to have a really big impact in the long run if you're staying hydrated and properly fueling your body with electrolytes and all those beautiful trace minerals. So that is what we do on our podcast. And I'm hoping Kristen can make it so she shares her story because it's really powerful. But I mean, food is life. Like it's so, so important.
Wow. I actually have a couple of different stories of transformation from food. So I can really relate to that where, one of them that isn't even related to my keto journey, but actually how I got really on board with food being so powerful and healing was in my late 20s. Actually, I was diagnosed with advanced duodenitis. This is a story I haven't really got out there. I definitely haven't shared this on the podcast yet, but advanced duodenitis, which the part of the intestines that it connects to the bottom of your stomach is your duodenum or duodenum, depending on who you ask how to pronounce it. But it was so inflamed and irritated, they wanted to just remove it. They wanted to cut it out. So that's what, conventional medical doctors are really, really skilled at, like, what medication or what surgery will fix this thing. And so inflamed intestine equals we cut it out. And I also had ulcers, really horrible pain. And I was way too young to be having that kind of stuff going on.
Right.
But I was eating a standard American diet. My favorite breakfast was, I had young son and was married and a couple of stepsons. And my favorite breakfast was a double tall mocha with a couple of glazed donuts.
Yeah.
And, just eating whatever, And so I asked the doctors at that time, contemplating surgery. I said, should I be eating something different? And they said, oh, no. We find this has nothing to do with food. Right. And I was like, that kind of doesn't make sense. Like, right. The whole purpose of our digestive system is to digest food, and it doesn't relate to food. So it was kind of a weird thing because I'd always wanted to go see a naturopathic doctor, but I felt like I didn't have a good enough reason to go. Right. And then after this diagnosis and them telling me my only option was surgery, I was like, I think I finally have a good reason to go see a naturopathic doctor. Yeah. And at that time, we did some food allergy testing. I don't do that as much now, but we did food allergy testing. I eliminated several things. I basically just completely switched from a standard American diet to whole foods, 100% whole foods diet.
Love it.
And, everything cleared up, and no longer needed surgery, no longer was in pain. That kind of began my journey of, dietary experimentation and trying everything to find what was best and optimal for me. And, the work that I do now with keto, a lot of the people that are in the scene, you find that they've tried all the diets as well, right? Like they've tried things. And then, so, I went from, whole foods, and then I was doing food combining. Are you familiar with that concept?
I'm not. Share that with me. No.
Food combining is, I'm trying to remember the book, Harvey and Marilyn Diamond, back in maybe the late 70s or 80s, wrote a book on it. And so it's a theoretical approach, but basically it's that, protein foods need a high acid environment in your stomach to digest, whereas carbohydrates need a more alkaline environment. Like they don't need and they actually dilute the acid as well in your stomach. And so food combining is basically you eat certain foods in certain combinations, and then you avoid eating other foods in those combinations. So
interesting.
You need protein and vegetables together. You can eat, and fruits should be eaten alone because they digest very quickly. Starches should not be eaten with protein foods, and fats go with anything.
Right. Interesting.
So, again, radical diet change. I don't know how much of it was, the food combining helped this, or just basically really cleaning up my diet was probably the biggest factor of changing things. Then this is the continuum swinging really far, is going from food combining to vegetarianism, and then from vegetarianism to veganism, and then from veganism to raw foodist vegan. Oh my gosh. And after going vegan, it only took me took me a couple of weeks before I started being really tired, really sick. My doctor said I immediately developed pernicious anemia. My liver didn't. Your liver's supposed to have a 6-month supply of B12. Mine didn't. Like it ran out immediately. So I learned for sure that like my body doesn't do well with a vegan diet. But anyways, sharing that was stage one of my journey of figuring out that food is very important for healing the body. So what we eat matters. So I
want to point something out. I'm sorry, I'm coughing. Hold on one moment. Sorry. One of the things that you said about going to a naturopath, they work with prevention. Our doctors in the conventional medical system do not. They work with sick care. You go to them when you're sick. So that's what they learn. So going to someone like a naturopath, going to someone like myself as a functional nutritionist, or we talk about shifting your lifestyle so you don't get sick.
Yeah.
That's so important, because so many people our culture, we don't have that mindset. We don't have the prevention mindset.
Yeah. And we use the term healthcare to provide, our insurance and medical system. And we equate that with wellness care, but it's actually just, I often nickname it like just below death care. Like, how do we keep people from dying? And that's really the way a lot of it's geared towards, which it's important. It has its place. But if we're trying to live optimal wellness, optimal health, we need other people on our care team that are trained that way to know, how do we treat the whole body as one? How do we optimize health rather than just preventing death?
Right. 100%.
Then a lot of people, a lot of my clients, they don't understand that as well. Like I'll refer them. I have a functional medicine physician, a naturopath that I partner with, that I share and send a lot of my clients to. And some of them are resistant in the beginning because they're like, they don't really understand the difference between, they're like, oh, I have my doctor, it's covered by insurance. He runs all my tests for me every year. And I'm like, well, and it's been pretty remarkable too. So the clients that have been willing to go and get these extra tests, we found some things that their doctors like, this approach, right? It's, that's a little out of the range. We'll watch it.
Right.
And I joke that it's like, we'll watch it get worse until we do something about it.
Right.
Like,
and the functional, oh my gosh, sorry. And the functional ranges are so different.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that, Ciara. What does functional nutrition mean? What does that even mean?
Yeah. So, and by the way, I'm going to cough with you guys through this whole thing.
She's got the mute button, so you keep. You're
I
not
know
hearing her
you
cough,
see
but...
me. Yeah. It's a holistic, individualized approach. It's a root cause approach, right? So by the time you're sick, let's talk about your inflamed duodenum. That's a symptom. That's not the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a perfect example of what functional nutrition or functional medicine would do, is look at, well, interesting. What are the things you're eating?
Mm-hmm.
What is your stress like? Are you hydrated? Do you have proper stomach acid? Do you take Pepto-Bismol every single day or eat Tums? Do you, drink tons of coffee? Although coffee for many people is fine, but it can be very acidic if you don't have a good quality brand. Not all coffee is created equal. So that's what functional nutrition or functional medicine would do.
Mm-hmm.
We dive to the deep, deep root cause of what is going on with your system. And then we address that root cause. We don't band-aid the symptoms, right? So what would have happened for you if you got that little part of your duodenum removed? The rest wouldn't have gone away. Right? Something else would have happened.
Yeah, I would have had temporary symptom relief until the next section of my intestines got just as inflamed, and they had to cut that out.
Right. And then they're like shocked that like, like you're now removing all of these really poor quality foods and bad oils and fats and, highly processed snacks. And there's, you've lessened your inflammation. So it's kind of mind blowing, to be quite honest, why this is not more mainstream. We shouldn't have to be like fighting these. We're not like crusaders and renegades. We're just people that are like, we want to feel good and we want you to feel good. And we want you to know and feel empowered with the food choices you make.
Right. Yeah. So that's a big difference then. So conventional medical system in the United States and Canada, probably most of the world, is like you said, they're symptom based. Like, what symptom do you have? What medication or surgery can I give you to remove that symptom?
Right.
They're not trained to think of the body as a whole part. I mean, just the fact that we have these individual doctors. We have a heart doctor, a lung doctor, a liver doctor, a bone doctor, a brain doctor, a neck doctor, they just look at every little part as completely separate and not related. And I'll give you a little fun, tiny little story here, Ciara, about my training. I went to Bastyr University, which is one of the, top most world-renowned natural health institutes in the world. However, there's still a disconnect even there. My degree was a very specialized one. It was a double master's in nutrition and psychology. And the reason they had this program is because the students wanted this. They know that what you eat affects your brain, and your brain, how it functions, what you think and feel affects what you eat. Like they're not separate, and they're really important in providing health. And so all the students got that, right? But the way that the program is run, and I'm not trying to like diss on them or, they're the institute or anything like that, or just the way that it works. Like, we're just trying to illustrate the difference of how people are trained in the way that they think of these things. So there was one person that headed the nutrition side of our program and one person that headed the psychology side. And we always wanted, like, every class, we wanted it integrated. Please tell us how all these affect, but they were very separate classes. And so we had to do a lot of that integrating on our own, just because, again, those, the experts that were the head of those departments, that's the way they were trained. I even had a friend of mine that I told him I was getting this really unique degree, so proud of it. And he's like, how does food and psychology relate to each other?
Oh, okay. So interesting.
So that's normal though, right? Yeah. Like most people just think of that, like psychology is what you talk to a counselor about, and nutrition is like, how you eat healthy. Like that's it.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say is like our modern medicine is beautiful in a lot of ways. And I like that you said, like, we're not dissing on them. There is a time and a place for that. And there are medical procedures and medical advancements that we collectively are incredibly grateful for. With that said, it's different than what we're talking about. We're
Right.
talking about this like hole in the system. It is broken because it's not serving people before they're sick.
Right.
And so that's, what we're talking about, like that precursor, right? You shouldn't only have to rely on your doctor when you're sick. You should have support from any sort of doctor, whether it's a naturopath, to really get that preventative care.
Right. Right. Yeah. So big difference between functional nutrition, functional medicine,
Right.
and conventional approaches too. And, we can talk a little bit about then, like, why those lab values are different, right? I just wanted to welcome the people that are joining us live. Please join us, tell us where you're joining us from, give a comment. Also, the running quiz of the day is, where is Carole going for Thanksgiving weekend? Please post your guests, please post your guesses in the comments. Yeah, so do you mind sharing a little bit then? Because, people will get labs from their doctors. And this is one of the things recently, for example, that one of my clients, she has very good care for standard medical care. She gets annual checkups and is followed by physicians. And I was referred her to my functional medicine doctor, and I was just checking through her labs myself, first time I'd seen them. And I said, oh, this one is like really high. Like, has your doctor said anything? And is this, and we went and looked back, and like for 3 years it's been high, and the doc had never said anything to her about it. And so she's really excited to see this functional medicine doctor now. Another one of my clients ended up had a nodule on her thyroid that's getting a biopsy. That, this is something you can probably appreciate, is like standard thyroid tests are not going to find any dysfunction until things are really bad. And so the way that this functional medicine doctor looked at the labs was like, things are a little off. Let's go get some more further testing for you. And they actually, they found like really early stuff that was really important to catch. So can you talk a little bit then about like, how do you look at labs compared to like the reference ranges, they're so called?
Yeah. So I was just, if you heard me ferociously typing, I just wanted to make sure that I'm saying the right ranges. So let me give you an example.
Okay.
So
Robin's joining us from Texas. Welcome, Robin.
Hi,
Glad you're
Robin.
Here.
Or was that her guess that you're going to Texas? Or she's saying she's from Texas?
I live in Phoenix, Arizona, if that gives you a little bit of a hint, but I think she's in Alvin, Texas. So
okay. All right.
That would be oddly specific if she was guessing that I was going
maybe she knew.
Maybe there's something really cool in Alvin, Texas I should go check out. Valen's asking if I'm going to Vegas for Thanksgiving. That's a good guess. I'm going to Vegas in December. But that's not correct. I'm good guess though. Thanks for participating. Keep guessing.
So let's just like use vitamin D as an example, because I think that's a really easy one for everyone to understand.
Don't mention the I word that usually goes with, because that will, since we're live on certain things, but just vitamin D is good for your body.
Vitamin D is very good for your body. Yes, vitamin D is essential. So when you are looking at conventional ranges of vitamin D, so like let's just say you get your blood drawn and you're looking at your vitamin D ranges. Conventional ranges are 30 to 100. Functional ranges, so sorry, when a doctor sees that and you are anywhere from 30 to 100, you're good. Yep, your vitamin D is totally in range. A functional value wants you between 50 and 80. So the ranges are much tighter. And this is not going to be the same, for each thing. But every single lab you pull, like your thyroid labs, the functional ranges are going to be way, way tighter. They really want you in a very smaller range. They talk about that because that's where you're going to be at your optimal health. Yeah. You're not going to be as healthy, with your vitamin D level at a 30 that you would be at a 90. Right. So it's almost like ridiculous to think about those conventional ranges and why they're so wide and what the explanation is for that. I know Kristen in her practice runs all types of blood work. She is a restorative wellness practitioner. She also does, she just texted me, she also does functional lab testing. And for me, I mostly work with the habit and the food. So at some point I may incorporate blood work because I think it's a really good way of knowing what's happening in your body on the next level, right? So there is so much we could do, just like you were saying, Carole, like just by switching the way that you're eating, you feel better already. So there's a lot that you could be doing foundationally to shift that before blood work really comes into the picture. But it is really good to like get your blood work drawn yearly and test it on with the functional lab ranges to really be able to know what's happening.
And I actually have my clients run a bit of blood work more regularly, depending on what we see.
Okay.
I'm looking at metabolic markers specifically that I'm looking at. So I'll do a little plug here if you don't know about this one, Ciara, but like ownyourlabs.com is a company that empowers consumers to be able to order their own labs directly to go to LabCorp. So it's not available in New York, New Jersey, or Rhode Island. For some reason, those states don't let people, that's illegal to, or something. There's something there that doesn't allow them to do it.
You can't do anything in New York. You can't get stool samples run. You can't get urine tests run. You can't do any of these things. It's really kind of crazy.
But you guys, the states are so much closer together. It couldn't be too hard just to go, maybe
unless you live on Long Island,
your second house.
Yeah. Like, so if you're anywhere like in the Manhattan area, you could easily pop to New Jersey, but I'm on Long Island. So I'm like getting over the bridges or through the tunnels is just, it's like you might as well go to Canada. Like it is it's a trip. So, but that's a great resource to share. And for anyone not in New York, that's awesome.
There's a couple more too. So there's ultalabs.com as well. And another one you can order your own labs. They don't go through LabCorp. You end up having to find a different practitioner to draw the blood. And a lot of them actually partner with like naturopathic doctors and other places that draw blood. And another one that I've used is Life Extensions as well. You can order labs through there too. So there's a lot of different options now, which I love because, in the past it was trying to get people to get their doctor, how do I help my layperson client tell their doctor why they need, they need to coach their doctor and explain why they need these labs. And it was really frustrating.
Right.
And it was only recently that I realized like I wanted them to run insulin. That's one of the ones that I'm looking at because it's actually a very early predictor of your progression on insulin resistance all the way to diabetes. And high insulin is the first thing that we can see that's elevated long before A1C or even your fasting blood glucose is going to be the last thing that shows up. So, oh my gosh, welcome, Kristen. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Ciara.
Hi.
So Robin's sharing that every time she has her blood tested, she has no vitamin D and she has to take a prescription. What am I doing wrong? Is that a fun question to tackle? Now, we're not giving any specific medical advice. We're just education in general. Robin, we're not your practitioner, so we can't specifically tell you. But in general, if somebody were to say like, why is my vitamin D always so low? Why do I have to take a prescription? Well,
let me bring Kristen up to date because she's like, would probably be her question. But we were actually just talking about the tighter lab ranges when it comes to functional testing versus conventional. So we use vitamin D as the example. I know it is your favorite. I said that right before I said it, that you do a lot of this in your practice. And so we were talking
really quickly, Kristen, don't mention the I word that's associated with vitamin D. I found that if we talk about that on here, then the YouTube and Facebook will no longer show this to anybody. So just in general, health and wellness is what we're talking about. So
okay, fabulous. Thank you, Carole. So yes, the lab ranges are much tighter when we're looking in the body in the scope of functional medicine. We want to see what does the body need to function or perform optimally. So when we go to our PCP and we get blood drawn, they're looking at a range that was determined based on basically pooling all these people, taking an average number. Well, newsflash, our society as a whole is so sick. So the ranges have come down and become so much more broad. The example, which we're using here with vitamin D that I always say is, now the lab range of your traditional Western med doctor is 30 to 100. Well, if I got a 30 on a test, that's not the same as 100. That's a really broad range. So we like to see those much tighter, between 65 and 85. If Robin is constantly experiencing low vitamin D levels, one thing we would want to actually look at is where vitamin D is absorbed. So we'd look at the large intestine, believe it or not, because that's where we absorb water, vitamins, and minerals. So one thing I would have her check first is digestion. Is she absorbing everything optimally? The best way to tell that is, are you having 1 to 2 good bowel movements a day? Are you experiencing any gas, bloating, or belching? And if not, and you're digesting and absorbing, then you're good to go. And I've personally seen that a liposomal vitamin D is much better absorbed in the body when taken with the larger meal of the day. So like a dinner time, and it would be a liquid form, tends to be absorbed much easier. And you would want to work with a practitioner, like Carole was just saying, because they could then specifically determine your dose. Some people thrive on 2,000 IUs. I personally take closer to 12,000. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, love it. I'm a really big fan as well of, let's test first to see where your level is. Let's supplement if needed, and then let's test again. Because so many times people are just like, well, I just take 5,000, I just take 10,000 because I heard it's good for me. But
like every day. And if you test, we can usually bring the levels up and see a good reaction to the dose in about 6 months. So test, dose, test.
I was really surprised. So I moved from Seattle, Washington. I lived there 27 years, and I moved to Phoenix, Arizona about 1.5 years ago. And one of the reasons I moved here is because I know that sun is good for my health, like my mental health, my physiological health. And, so I get sun exposure every day, midday, full body, an hour or more. And so I assumed I'm so good now that I moved to the desert and get this regular sun exposure, real sun exposure. But I just was running some other labs earlier this year, and I'm like, well, what the heck? I'll check my vitamin D. And it was down to 30. And I'm like, what is going on? So I'm like, okay, back on the supplement train. And I've been taking, I did some mega dosing at first, and then I've been doing 10,000 a day. I retested again because I want to see, is that too much? And I'm like at 79 at 10,000 a day and still getting sun exposure. Now, I know this late in the year that the sun is lower, whatever angle on the planet. And so you don't convert as much of it as well. But that just shows, and I take a liquid as well. I take in one that's an MCT oil. Like I like one that's in a fish oil or some kind of real good quality oil. And then I take it with a spoonful of Barlean's fish oil as well. So then I'm getting the double, like
perfect,
like because like absorbs like, right? Like you need fat to digest and absorb and transport fats, fat soluble vitamins. So okay, Robin's on high doses of morphine. This is probably a clue into why she's having trouble. Do you have a suspicion? Do you want to speak to that about why that may affect her absorption and bowel movements probably? And
do you want me to?
Yeah, go for it. Because honestly, I don't want to misspeak. This is an important one.
Okay. So typically morphine, and it depends on how long she's been on that mega dose, but because it has, it is an incredible drug and it can really help with pain management, but it can also affect the stomach lining. So if there is any breakdown in that epithelial layer in the stomach, then we can sometimes see something called leaky gut. And that is when basically the tight junctions in the gut are more separated or spread out, which allows undigested food to go into the bloodstream, which lessens the absorption in the digestive tract. So this could definitely be the connection here, could be that GI absorption connection due to the morphine. If you've been on morphine for, 5 to 10 days, I don't think that would be the cause. But if you've been doing this for weeks or months and you've been cycling that in and out of your life, then that could definitely have a a big kind of red flag as to why you're not fully absorbing the vitamin D. 5 years, Robin said. Yeah. So you're probably a great place to start here would be to start tightening up and sealing up that leaky gut. And we can do that with wonderful food options like bone broth. It is so nourishing. The collagen in there is going to literally act like plaster to holes in the wall and seal up the gut lining. We can do that with some collagen if you are open to it. Collagen peptides are great. Marshmallow root, Jerusalem artichoke. There are a lot of very calming, soothing herbs that work beautifully and really tightening up that gut lining. And then Carole, just to get back to what you were saying with the vitamin D, taking it with like is huge. And we see that absorption is a bit better when taken with K. So a vitamin D K2 would most likely be better absorbed than just a straight run-of-the-mill vitamin D.
The other thing that we find, a fun fact about vitamin D specifically too, with relation to the keto diet, is when people are doing low carb, it actually will activate more of the vitamin D in the bloodstream than otherwise. And so it was interesting because when I first started, my levels just changing my diet, my vitamin D levels came up just from that as well too. So that's another piece why I was so surprised about my low levels, but also why it's so important to keep checking.
Exactly. And Ciara, what isn't there an app or a website?
I literally, we're so
Yes.
insane. I was actually going to ask you, Carole, how can I don't see where I could put in the comments, but maybe I'll do it in the private chat to you because it doesn't let me comment right now. But it's called My Tavern. And Carole, I just put in the private chat if you want to share that.
Okay.
So this is a website available to anyone. And it basically helps identify medication-caused nutrient deficiencies. So, Robin, you could put in there morphine, or if it actually has like a name, a technical name on it, put it in there and it will tell you any sort of nutrient deficiencies that you may have based on that medication. They have to share that information, right? Again, we were talking about this before, like modern medicine is beautiful, but we can't forget that these medications are really powerful and they don't just come into the body. Again, like we were saying, everything's interconnected and affect one thing, right? So some of these medications are powerhouses and they really do have a great effect in our entire body. So again, about empowering yourself, like Robin, we hope that this doesn't scare you in any way, knowing that the medication that you may need to be on is affecting your health in another way. It's about feeling empowered and understanding like, okay, now that I know this, what can I do to help support my body and find that balance?
Exactly. And
So-
I also just
Okay.
threw something in the chat too, Carole, if you don't mind sharing this. It's an app that you can download onto your smartphone, and it's called D-Minder, D as in dog, Minder. And it's a comprehensive vitamin D tracking app. So it uses GPS in your phone to figure out where you are on the planet.
What?
Yes.
This is crazy. I graduated with my nutrition degree, 2012.
Okay.
Years ago now, and like back then it was just like there was a website that we could go to that kind of had like different
Yes.
lines. And now it's like an app. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I know. We're so fancy.
I'm so excited you guys are here because I'm just realizing I haven't got to hang out with nutrition nerds like this in a long time.
Isn't it so fun to geek out?
So
Yeah, like, oh my gosh. Okay, cool. I'm writing this down. We'll put it in the show notes as well. So D-Minder app. It's on the screen for those of you watching.
And
Okay.
then it'll tell you, this is what I love about it. It computes when you can get the best vitamin D and how much you can get, but it also gives you a timer. So it'll alert you like, this is the best time. Now, granted, some of us may be working or have, be out grocery shopping or something, but it'll alert you when the best time to go out and get that vitamin D is. And then you can track your history and it'll estimate your levels on this ongoing basis.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very cool. Like over the summer in New York, I would get sun every day outside. And it was like amazing. I was like, great. I just got from sitting outside doing nothing 1,000 IUs, right? It's like not gonna, obviously New York is not Arizona, and especially New Hampshire, especially now in New Hampshire, but it's something, and it's another tool to add to your toolbox.
So Valerie's sharing that her vitamin D went from 22, which is very low, even by conventional standards, to 51 pretty quickly when she added more salmon and sardines to her diet, took outdoor walks on her lunch break. I need to get back to that. Yeah. When you find something that's healthy for you, doing it. So Robin's getting, you guys are great. Thanks, Robin. I would love to share a little bit in a moment, because it sounds like I'm going to assume that with being on high doses of morphine that Robin's probably in a lot of pain. I want to share my story of pain recovery just because it's related to what she's talking about. But first, Kristen, I would love to. So Ciara gave us a little bit of a teaser about your story of what got you into the work that you do, but I would love to hear it from you, and please share.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the seed was first planted when I was a young girl. I was born and raised on Cape Cod in Massachusetts. And my middle brother, Matthew, was diagnosed with autism right before his second birthday. And 28 years ago, autism was pretty rare. And basically there was no internet to Google, what's going on. And once they got the diagnoses, they were very open to alternative therapies to help support him. So we did things like acupuncture and chelation and Reiki. And one of the things along the way was going gluten-free. And I can attest that gluten-free 28 years ago was pretty nasty. It was like eating cardboard. But my parents said, if we're going to do this with Matt, we're all going to be on board here. So that's when the seed was first planted. And then flash forward to, I was about 15 years old, and I always had very irregular periods. So I was put on birth control really young. At about 14 years old, I was put on birth control to try to regulate those. And being a 14, 15-year-old, I forgot to take it. So 2 days went by, 3 days went by, 4 days went by. And I said, know what? I forgot to take this little pill. I'm just going to take them all at once. And then I ended up getting really sick and ended up with Charlie horses in my legs. I was getting about 80 to 100 a day. And we went to Boston hospitals because, we're told those are some of the best in the country. We went up there. And at that point, I was then unable to walk. And half of the team of doctors that I saw believed that it was a virus that settled in my spine. And the other half believed it was Lyme disease. I ended up in a wheelchair for 8 months and was just told, here's a bunch of Valium. Good luck. So the traditional therapy was, let's just hit your system with mega doses of antibiotics. We don't really know what it is. Is it viral? Is it Lyme? Is it bacterial? But let's just do this. So I was doing antibiotics and IV antibiotics for about a year. And that then later on really affected my gut health and my hormones. And I ended up with an autoimmune disease. I ended up with endometriosis and was just kind of told, good luck. And I didn't believe in my heart that my body wanted to fail itself at 17 years old.
Yeah.
I understand like 117, but not 17. So someone along the way said, why don't you try a holistic practitioner or a holistic nutritionist? And I think we've all been at the point where when you are feeling so terrible and you're so sick, someone could tell you, like, go outside and eat tree bark and you'll feel better. And you're like, okay, I'm going.
I'll try.
So I gave it a shot. I started getting better and totally changed career paths. I was a singer-songwriter, changed that and said, this is what I want to do for a living. And it's really neat, just full circle. I got to do my preceptorship with the nutritionist that I saw when I was sick. And then I opened Nourish in 2013. So that's my little story.
Wonderful. Wonderful. You missed the one I shared. I won't go over it again because people watching would be bored, but my first experience of nutrition healing was in my late 20s with, basically they wanted to chop my intestines out because they were inflamed. And I said, should I change my diet? And they're like, nah, that doesn't do anything to do with it. So, yeah.
And it's crazy because once they take those things out, there's no putting them back in.
Yeah, right. It
You
just
know?
bears out the next part of it. So, Robin, I'm so sorry. So she's saying she cries every day. I don't know what your situation is, but I can imagine you're in a lot of pain. And if Ciara and Kristen won't mind and let me indulge Robin and share my part of my story of how I came to be a keto, board certified keto nutritionist. I've got degrees in nutrition and psychology that I had prior to coming on board with keto. So in March of 2014, I was in a really bad car accident. I was rear-ended by somebody going about 35 miles an hour. She didn't even tap on her brakes, and I was the last in a long line of stopped traffic. She slammed into me, very old car with no airbags in it. It broke my seat on impact. Then my car was shoved into the car in front of me, and my legs smashed up against the dash. No airbags again in this old car. And so I had crush injuries for my legs from my knees to my ankles. And I'll spare you the photos, but horrific bruising from knees to ankles there. And then, so two things kind of simultaneously developed over the next year and a half that just had me pretty much disabled. So I spent the first 3 months after the accident being bedridden because the pain in my legs was so bad. And I developed something called chronic regional pain syndrome, which, from what I understand, the pain chart for chronic regional pain syndrome is like the worst pain a human can experience.
Oh, wow.
And it's progressive. It's crippling and disabling. So basically it's nerve dysfunction. It's also brain dysfunction. So when pain is this, and Robin, I don't know what your unique situation is, but I know that this is the way that pain works, is that the longer we're in pain, the way that the brain works is that part of that, so that whatever part of my brain that's connected to my legs, my lower legs where the pain was, it's just pain. The cells around that area then also start to copy that. And so if you're in pain long enough, the pain will spread to other parts of your body, even though there's no actual injury there anymore. So that was what was starting to happen to me, because I started to feel the tingling in my thighs. So the pain was moving up my legs, and it wasn't actually spreading physically in my legs, it was spreading in my brain. And I was referred to, they wouldn't put me on any painkillers. This was in Washington State back in 2014. And they basically referred me to a pain specialist who did nothing but refer me to a pain group. Basically, learn to live with it was what the treatment was. And I was like, really? Like, that's all we've got, And so the thing is, so I went to and the other thing that was happening to me simultaneously is I had an undiagnosed brain injury from the impact. So this is actually pretty common when you've got some other injury that supersedes it. The pain is so great there, they don't notice the other symptoms, right? So I was laid up in bed for 3 months, not moving, walking. That could have been a symptom by itself of a concussion, but because it was my legs, they just overlooked that. So the brain injury ended up resulting in post-traumatic hypopituitarism, which basically meant the inflammation in my brain started to cause my pituitary gland to not work correctly. And that caused everything else in my body, all my other glands in my body, to start going haywire as well. And so the longer I was sick, the more symptoms I had. And so perhaps you two know, Ciara and Kristen know, that the more symptoms you have when you go to a conventional doctor, the more likely they are to refer you to a psychiatrist. They think you're crazy, you're depressed, you're making it up. You can't possibly, there's nothing that causes all these symptoms. And I had to figure this out on my own. I mean, I was so desperate. I really believed that food could heal me, but it took me a long time to figure out really even what was going on. So I actually have had 2 different aunts on different sides of my family have this same CRPS pain syndrome that I had. That was something that I was like, I guess I'm just going to have to live with this. And, a year and a half after the accident, I couldn't stand because the swelling in the legs was so bad. It was so painful. A light touch was excruciatingly painful. I couldn't do acupuncture, right? So standard things that you would think would help with pain management, acupuncture would cause gushing blood to squirt out of my legs and just excruciating pain. Like all the pain signals and sensation signals just get completely screwy in the syndrome that happens. So I was just like, all right, I'll deal with that later. I'm kind of in denial. I don't want that to be what's going on. But so I finally figured out the post-traumatic hypopituitarism, the brain injury thing. My first course of action was actually to do 30 days of every kind of brain anti-inflammatory that I knew of from my school. It made no difference. So then I racked my brain to heal my brain. And thank you all for letting me share this, because I want to share with Robin like how transformative this is for pain. And I've had several clients that have had chronic pain that is just literally magically just gone. And so I remembered in school that a ketogenic diet was used to treat epilepsy. So this was like my thought process of how I got to following a keto diet myself, was that, well, if epilepsy, something's not working right in the brain, if a keto diet will help that, perhaps it'll help my brain injury. I started researching it, and I started to understand that ketones were an alternate fuel source. And I decided that, well, maybe that would just help me have enough energy to get back out of bed. I didn't have any idea that it would help heal my brain. I just thought maybe it'll give me an alternate fuel source that I could get some healing and get a little better. The transformation was just dramatic. Within days, the symptoms of the brain injury and the pain in my legs was almost gone.
Wow.
And we know now, we have a lot of research actually that shows how, being in a ketotic state actually basically counteracts the pain mechanisms and inflammation in the body too. So that was one of the myths that my naturopath I was seeing was like, well, be careful with all that saturated fat on a keto diet, because that's really inflammatory. And my CRP when I started, before I started keto, was like 7.2, crazy high. Within 2 weeks, it dropped 70%.
Wow.
Eating bacon and butter, right? And so we know now that it turns like I forgot all the names of the enzymes now, the COX-2, blah, blah, blahs, all that stuff. It basically turns off and turns down, like from 11, it turns it down to a 0.5 on the, the pain and inflammation in the body. So it's so powerful. So basically got through the inflammation and the pain that I had. My CRPS is completely in remission going on. So 2015 in May was my keto anniversary. So what's the math on that? 20, almost, 6.5, almost 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Completely gone.
Amazing.
So Robin, and also Robin, I'm gonna assume too that you being on pain medication for this long, I'm just gonna assume that you probably don't have the financial resources. I know that when I was in that situation, I was getting I had a young son. I was getting my food from the food bank. I couldn't work. And I know that, Ciara and Kristen are going to talk about, if we have time, about, quality food and organic and things like that. But I want to tell you that the effects that I'm talking about for pain reduction from keto specifically, that you don't have to get organic. Like I was getting my food, again, at the food bank, and I was doing my best to put together a keto diet from that food. And I got all of the effects from that by just getting the best that I could. Protein, keeping the carbs low basically was what really mattered. So I just wanted to inspire you a little bit, Robin. I feel for you, and I know chronic pain, what a heavy lead blanket that is, and how it's invisible because other people can't see it. And so they don't have a lot of compassion for what you're going through. So whatever it is that's resulted in you having to be on the pain management like this, my heart goes out to you. Send me a message and let me know if you want more private information. You can find me on Facebook. Also, I'm going to put, Robin, I have a text number that you can join as well. If you want to text me privately about this as well, I'd love to. It's on the screen there. So 602-704-5309. So Robin, if you'd like to chat a little bit more privately, if you don't want to tell the whole world what's going on, I would love to just, give you a little bit more inspiration and tips there. So, all right. So thank you all for, I told Ciara we were going to chat about stuff and see what happened. And
I love it.
Conversations were going to happen. And so we want to cover, I know that you've got to leave here in a little bit, Ciara. Do you have a couple of minutes then to
yeah, we have about 10 more minutes, no problem.
Nutrient density, and then like how to prioritize like which foods, if you've got a limited budget, like how do you know what to prioritize, what's important and what doesn't matter as much. So
yeah. So I think we should split this into two things here. Like protein and fat, they're both wildly important. So veggies are easier. Clean 15, Dirty Dozen is a quick and easy one. You can go right to the environmental working group. They tell you the Dirty Dozen, the 12 dirtiest vegetables and fruits. You want to stay away from those. Those should be organic. Otherwise, the Clean 15, yeah, you could choose conventional for that because they're less sprayed. I'll start with fat because I think you like fat, and anyone on this or listening to this podcast is going to like fat. So we talk on our podcast a lot about this and each in our individual practices. Quality fat is vitally important. So fat is the building blocks of your hormones. It is how you absorb vitamin A, D, E, and K. It provides cushioning for your bones and joints. It helps the adequate absorption of and utilization of protein. It is vitally important. The things that we want to stay away from are the highly processed vegetable oils, right? So the canola oil, the rapeseed oil, the peanut oil, although that's like not as common. Even the vegetable oil blends. So like if you see a olive oil and canola oil blend, those are the oils we want to stay away from. They are so highly processed, so highly heat treated, chemically treated. By the time that they get to your system, your body doesn't know what to do with them. So what we want to opt for, I say less is more. Get yourself a good high quality extra virgin olive oil or a good high quality butter. So I often recommend using Kerrygold. Kerrygold's really affordable. Like for an entire block, maybe it's $2.50, $3. Like that's super affordable and that will stretch really far. And then for any of your oils, these are kind of the buzzwords you want to look for. Again, this is about choosing all of these words together is the best, but do the best you can. So organic. So organic is just going to mean that there's no pesticides or herbicides that were used on the origin of whatever that oil is. So if it's coconut oil, that coconut. If it was an olive oil, the olives. You want to choose unrefined. So unrefined means that there was no additional processing, no chemical treatment, no heat treatment. When you have a refined oil, it has gone through another process, typically to change the flavor. You want to look for virgin or extra virgin, and you want to look for, what is the last one that I'm not thinking of? Cold pressed.
Cold pressed.
Yes, thank you. I'm like, I will find it, which is very different than cold processed. So if you see cold pressed or expeller pressed, it really just means that the oil was extracted from that original fruit, nut, or seed through 2 steel plates versus cold processed or expeller processed. There were chemicals and possibly heat, very high heat used in that process. So looking for any of those.
They tricked you because back when I was in school, they didn't call it cold processing, but basically they're like, this is cold. This is close enough. So we'll trick people into thinking that's cold pressed.
Yep. No, it's so different. So you need to read it carefully. And then if any of you guys have questions about the fat, come and put them in. And then Chris, do you want to talk about protein?
Sure, absolutely. So your protein is one of your building blocks. It converts into amino acids. It helps repair muscles. It helps fuel us. It gives us energy. Now, Carole, you might be able to touch more upon too much protein can actually cause more of an increase in blood sugar. So you want to be kind of mindful of your proteins when you're doing more of a ketogenic diet. But when we're looking to choose our proteins, you want to eat them as closely to how Mother Nature provided them for you. So I always say when the day comes that a chicken lays an egg and it's just the white in the egg, that's when you can just eat egg whites. But for now, let's eat it the way Mother Nature intended, pairing the beautiful protein of the egg white with the beautiful fat of the yolk. So you eat the two together.
There's rare instances where there's 2 yolks, but I've yet to see an egg that has no yolk.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And I have 40 chickens in my backyard.
So lucky.
Really focusing on this protein in a whole food source. So using really, if you have the availability, nose to tail. we're used to eating these big cuts of meat in our society, and we'll eat these just really unflavorful pieces of meat. If you ever have seen like a conventional chicken breast, it is pumped with water and saline, and it's huge. And then you'll see like a pasture-raised or an organic chicken, and it's more of a smaller size. And you think, well, I'm going to buy that one. That's more. But really, then when you cook it down, it shrivels up. So the big thing we keep in mind here with proteins is nutrient density. How much kind of bang can we get for our buck here? So if you have the availability to try any different types of protein, that would be excellent for diversifying the diet. So for dinner tonight, I had venison. Now, granted, my husband is a hunter, but trying bison or buffalo or
bear,
quail, or bear. Ciara came to visit us over the weekend, and we had bear shepherd's pie.
It was so good, but it's like, who tries that, right?
And it was so rich, right?
So rich.
So rich.
Really
like a little went such a long way. So that's when looking at switching to more of a holistic lifestyle and getting more whole foods. Food and money always come up, right? Like your expenses here, it can be so expensive to go to Whole Foods, and it's, there's no joke when it's called whole paycheck. So the thing you want to keep in mind is when you switch to more of a nutrient dense protein, a little is going to go a long way. You will find that instead of needing a 16-ounce conventional steak, if you purchase a grass-fed steak, you may feel full, or you will notice that you feel more full after 4 to 6 ounces, because there's more nutrients packed into that, because there's no hormones and the animal is not pumped with medication to really gain weight so quickly. So kind of the buzzwords we like to see here when purchasing our proteins are as close to, like I said, Mother Nature intended these animals to be. So pasture raised. That means that the cow or the chicken is grazing on pasture. It's eating grass. Grass-fed is another one that we love to see. Looking for grass-fed and grass-finished. So typically your beef cow is pumped with grain. And yes, that makes it really tasty, but it takes away a lot of the nutrients, because what the animal eats, we eat. So when the animal's eating grass and that grass converts to vitamin K2, then we get those wonderful vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. When the animal's eating conventional grain or soy, we're eating more grain and soy. So, and if you think about it, well, if the grain's pumping the cow, is it going to pump me up too? Right? Like there is that connection. Now, if you eat fish, you want to look for wild caught. Your cold water fish is going to be great. And let's see, am I missing any more buzzwords? See?
I would say the distinction with poultry. So you might see cage-free versus free range. Mm-hmm. Free range. So top of the hierarchy here is pasture raised, like Kristen said. Next down on the list is going to be free range. So that typically means that the chicken or turkey or duck had access to the outdoors, and they did spend a lot of time outdoors. Cage free really just means that those chickens weren't in a cage, but have no access to outdoors necessarily. So when we're talking about what nature intended, chickens are not vegetarian. They eat bugs, they eat grubs, they eat all of these beautiful insects outside. That's what we want our chickens to be eating. We don't want them in a hen house without having any access to outdoors. So when you're looking for chicken, pasture raised, and if you can't find that, free range is the next best option.
Right. I feel like that vegetarian fed is now marketed as like a really healthy thing. But like Ciara was just saying, they're meant to eat bugs and grubs. And the more yellow the yolk, that's typically a sign that they're not getting as much of those bugs and grubs. The more orange the yolk is really what we want to see. Just like I grew up on, not to name names, but Land O'Lakes butter. And it was like white. And then I started eating grass-fed butter and it's yellow. And I'm like, oh God, something's wrong with this butter. But in reality, that's how butter should be.
So David, I just want to clarify David's question. So he's asking about the shepherd's pie that you guys ate, if it had mashed potato. Now, Ciara and Kristen are here. They're not keto people. So I would say that I'm going to guess they probably had potatoes, but I would say a really easy swap to make it a keto version is just do some mashed cauliflower on top. Or you don't even have to go so far as mash it. Like you could just make a basic shepherd's pie and put chunks of cauliflower on top of that and roast that in the oven. So just that's a good question. David's the carb police here today. So thanks for asking that question. So.
And we use sweet potato. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sweet potato. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're gonna have to wrap up here. I know I had a quiz question from earlier. I just want to make sure that I reveal the answer. The question was, where is Carole going for Thanksgiving weekend? I'm actually taking a road trip to Grand Canyon and Zion National Park in Utah. Very unconventional Thanksgiving. I don't even know what I'm going to have on Thanksgiving, but I probably be sitting in my tent eating some I don't know, turkey luncheon meat or something like that. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So nice.
Yeah, so and it wraps around my birthday weekend, and so this will be the second year where like birthdays are a little unconventional. So I've decided the last couple of years, like I'm just gonna go someplace cool. And moving to Arizona, there's a lot of scenic places to see around here. Yeah. It's fun you're talking about seafood actually. So next week's episode, actually our next episode. So no episode on Thanksgiving, but on December 2nd, next episode, I actually have Sina Wheeler of Sina Seafood. They're out of the Pacific Northwest, and they have a company that specializes in local caught Alaskan sea bass and salmon and halibut. And so that's who I have coming on December 2nd.
Awesome.
And she sent me a sample pack of all their fish a couple weeks ago, and I've already devoured all of it.
Yeah, of course.
So that's fun that you're talking about that, because we'll have a very high quality seafood producer coming on in a couple of weeks. So where can I know we've got to wrap up here. So where can people find you, Ciara and Kristen, if they want to know more about what you do and want to know more support for functional lab values or just habit change with their transitioning to more healthful eating habits, whole foods?
Definitely. So you could find me. I'm on Instagram at Ora, ORA Nutrition, or oranutrition.com. And then you could find both of us, and Chris, I'll let you share your info too, but you can find both of us on the Fiercely Holistic podcast, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or anything. And we're also on Instagram. That's just more like our catalog. We're not super, super active on that account, but at the Fiercely Holistic podcast.
Yeah. And then my company is Nourish Holistic Health and Nutrition. We're located here in Bradford, New Hampshire. You can find us online at nhhnutrition.com for Nourish Holistic Health and Nutrition.com. And then on Instagram at NHH Nutrition and Facebook, NHH Nutrition.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for being here, taking the time out of your day to be here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I got to mention our show sponsor. Our transcripts are provided by ketospace.com. That's keto-space.com. So go check them out. They generously provide transcripts for the show that if you're reading this later, right down there in my blog, that's who provided it for us. So if you've enjoyed the show, please share it with somebody that you love and care about. Sharing is caring. And remember, if you help this show grow, we'll help you shrink. So thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye, Carole. Thank you.